It won't be official until midnight, but Democrats appear to be headed for a one-night presidential debate with 10 candidates in September. Today is the deadline to meet the criteria laid out by the Democratic National Committee. The polling and fundraising requirements are stricter than they were for the first two debates. They have to reach 2% or higher in 4 credible polls and to raise money from at least 130,000 donors. And that has some of the candidates who did not make the cut crying foul. Here is U.S. Senator Michael Bennet of Colorado speaking to delegates at last week's DNC summer meeting.
If we wanted to be the party that excluded people, we'd be Republicans. These rules have created exactly the wrong outcomes, and they will not help us beat Donald Trump. I'm not going to be on the debate stage next month, but I am going to be out in Iowa and New Hampshire and South Carolina and Nevada building the constituency for change this country needs.
And so we are joined now by someone with experience both on the debate stage as a 2004 presidential contender and the former governor of Vermont, and behind the scenes as chair of the Democratic National Committee from 2005 to 2009. Howard Dean, welcome to the NewsHour. So as you know, the earlier debates, there were 20 candidates spread over 2 nights. This time there are going to be only 10, even though there are 20 candidates still in the race. Is that the right approach, do you think, for the Democratic Party?
Well, you have to have some order to this. And I will say, Michael Bennet, first of all, is one of my favorite candidates. But the truth is, you cannot have what the Republicans had, which is these chaotic series of debates, which then went on to nominate somebody who ended up as president, but is probably the worst president in the United States' history. We have to have a reasonably orderly process. Now, Michael has another shot, as do some of the other people who didn't get to the criteria this time. The same criteria applies to next month's debates. But there at some point, if you can't get the grassroots together and raise the money and be in 20 states and raise your profile, then you can't be on the debate stage. There are 600 people roughly that run for president all the time, and most of them never get on the debate stage. There has to be some order to this.
You're saying at some point there has to be some order, but as the campaign of Senator Bennet is pointing out, we're still 5 months away from the first voters voting, and they're asking, why is the DNC in a rush to squeeze to winnow this field?
Well, they don't necessarily. Look, the winnowers of the field are the people that aren't raising the money and don't have the grassroots efforts. And now they have another month to do it, and I think that's fair. And even if they don't get it done in the next month, they can still go into Iowa, and there'll be other forums and so forth and so on. But you cannot have the spectacle that went on in 2016 in the Republican Party, and that's what these rules are aimed at trying to not have.
But again, I guess, Governor, the question they're raising is that why shouldn't this be up to the voters who are going to be voting in early 2020 rather than up to the Democratic Party officials? And frankly, some of the candidates are saying the process has not been transparent.
It is transparent, and it is up to the voters. If the voters choose one of these folks, and some of these folks that didn't get on the stage next week end up in the top 3 in Iowa or New Hampshire or Nevada or South Carolina, then they will be in the primary. We're not excluding anybody from the process. We are trying to maintain a reasonable set of criteria so people can listen to what's going on in the debates. If I'd had my way, I actually still would have had 2 nights. I just would have had 5 people on each night. But look, this is always a difficult situation. We always run into this. We had to handle the same thing. We had 3 fringe candidates that wanted to be on all the time. At some point, you can't be on all the time because it distracts from the message of the people who are in the race, and that's the top 10 people. And I don't have a big quarrel with this.
I was reading some of the criticisms, or at least questions raised by Governor Steve Bullock, who's not going to be on the debate stage. Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, not going to be on the debate stage. And then, again, Senator Bennet, his campaign advisor, put out a statement today, and maybe he was quoting Senator Bennet himself. He said the DNC's process is stifling debate at a time when we need it the most. He said, we're rewarding celebrity candidates with millions of Twitter followers, billionaires who buy their way onto the debate stage, and candidates who've been running for president for years. And they went on to say it forces campaigns to fork over millions of dollars to Facebook.
Pete Buttigieg is an example of somebody who did fine under this current system. Julian Castro did fine under this system. Amy Klobuchar, United States Senator, did fine under this system. Look, you're going to have people complain. I think the world of Michael, and I like Steve Bullock a lot too. I hope they make it into the next round. But you're going to have to demonstrate some significant support, and significant support both in polls and in grassroots support in order to get on that stage, and I think that's fair. You can argue that this is arbitrary, and maybe it is too early, but there has to be some order to the debates, and that's what Perez is trying to do, and I think he's doing the best he can. So,
but you're saying if you had designed these debates, you might have done it a little differently. You said you might have done it over 2 nights with fewer people. You might not have tightened
it. Yeah, sure. Yeah, but I'm not the chairman of the party. Tom is the chairman of the party. Believe me. Look, the party was in pretty bad shape when I took it over. It was in worse shape when Tom took it over. So, of course, there's always going to be differences of opinions, but I'm going to stand up for Tom Perez as long as I think he's doing the best he can, and I think he's doing the best he can.
And I should point out, we did seek today to talk with Chairman Perez. He was not available tonight, and we'll continue to try to talk to him. But finally, Howard Dean, how should voters look on this democratic process between now? Here we are at the end of August. The first votes are not going to be cast, in Iowa until early February. Should voters look on this as a process where, you know, it's good that a lot of candidates are still in the race until the end, or that it does get that there are many fewer as soon as possible?
No, I don't think we should have as many fewer as soon as possible. I think we should have a gradual winnowing process, which is exactly what's going on. I've enjoyed these debates. I thought the last one was a little rugged in terms of the way the panel asked the questions and the candidates went after each other. The first 3, for me, were just terrific. You know, there's a lot of people I've never seen in action that are on these debates, including Mike and Steve, who were both, I think, in the last debate. So I think this is a great system. I'm looking forward to more. I hope some of these candidates do make the criteria, which are not going to change for the next month's debate. I encourage them to do that and to work hard and to build their grassroots base. And I think that's good for everybody. And I think most Democrats really enjoy these debates, especially when we get to see people that we don't really know that well.
Howard Dean, the former chair of the Democratic Party, former candidate for president himself. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Judy.